Hello and welcome to the Blues Kind Show, the show for kind blues. Given the word on the street that it looks like Charlie may be on the move, I wanted to do an analysis of his prime to see what we will be missing at his best. I did this because I wanted to be fair on Charlie, because while I'm not the biggest fan, he's obviously an excellent player. So what I've done is aggregated his seasons from 2022 to 2025, which are the 4 best years of his career, and compared him to the other 3 best forwards in that same span. I've also done a little bit of an analysis of Charlie versus Harry, but for Harry's sake, I did this from 2021 to 2024. This is because obviously Harry missed a lot of this year, and unlike Charlie, Harry played pretty much all of 2021. So I thought comparing 4 years to 4 years at their peaks would be appropriate. I'm hoping this shows what we'll be losing for better and for worse, and how this may impact the team in general. So the first thing I wanted to look at is just some general statistics. This shows their rankings in these different categories as opposed to the macro data, because I thought that might be a little bit boring. 1 means that they're the highest rated in a statistical area, and 4 means that they've either had the fewest, the least, or are the worst at that particular stat. And that'll hold for the tables that I'll use sort of going forward. So for the period of 2022 to 2025, Jeremy Cameron is the highest rated forward, key forward, as you can see in the column marked with ratings points. He is followed by Charlie, and then Aaron Norton, and then Jesse Hogan. Frankly, I was surprised that Aaron Norton's that high, but look, he's kicked 190 goals in 4 seasons. He's the best tackling key forward, and he does a couple of other things that I'll get into later really well. So look, good for him. I will just say at the outset that I think it's very clear from these macro level stats that Jeremy Cameron is the best key forward. He kicks the most goals, has the most disposals, and we'll see some other stats later that demonstrate why he is a very complete player. Charlie is second for pretty much every stat apart from tackles, which largely contributes to why he's second overall. At a very high service level, this would show that Charlie's probably been the second best key forward in the league during this time, which again lines up with being second for disposals, marks, and goals. I wanted to look at how these players contribute to their team, and to me, marking is one of the main KPIs for a key forward. For me, it's almost as important as actually kicking goals, because I think what it does in terms of providing structure to your team, providing predictability to your team, is really important. If anyone has watched the Collingwood-Adelaide final from, a couple of weeks ago, seeing someone like Mason Cox just getting first hands to the ball, not letting the Adelaide forwards intercept, just creating a really good contest, you can see the value in marking. Even if you're not successful, just strong marking attempts on their own provide a huge amount of value. So, Charlie is mainly behind only Jesse Hogan in the stats that are on the screen. So that's marks, contested marks, marks inside 50, and marks on the league. Jesse Hogan is very clearly the best marking forward in the competition during this 4-year span. Adding to the previous graph, Jeremy Odley is the most prolific goal scorer, but not in terms of marks, where he is generally a bit lower. He's the worst contested mark, and by quite a bit. However, he does take the second most marks inside 50. What this suggests to me is that a player like Jeremy, he gets a lot of his marks through running patterns and finding space, as opposed to brute strength, wrestling, that sort of thing. Charlie, on the other hand, seems to have his marking opportunities come to him in harder circumstances. In terms of raw numbers, Charlie takes 2 contested marks a game, which is really good, while Jeremy takes less than 1. So he takes about it's about 60% more contested marks. Sorry, no, that's incorrect. Jeremy takes about 40% of the contested marks that Charlie takes, 2 compared to 0.8 per game. However, they're pretty much the same for number of marks taken and marks inside 50 and marks on the lead. So for the same number of marks, Charlie's having to take more than double the number of contested marks, suggesting that he's getting them in harder circumstances. This goes to a criticism that I have of Charlie, but people often level at Carlton in general. I feel he does a lot of wrestling or asks for the long ball over the back. This is not entirely on Charlie. This obviously comes to how the ball is delivered to him and how, the team is trying to set up. But seeing him do the wave over the back asking for the ball is something that I personally notice a lot. I think he could lead more than he does, lead up at the ball, and maybe play a little bit smarter in trying to lose his man. Charlie is consistently one of the best endurance runners at the club, but I personally don't see him doing the Jeremy Cameron, getting up the ground, getting involved in the play, and then racing back to goal while there's space inside 50. And that's how you can find little pockets where you don't need a contested mark. You can take a nice uncontested mark because you've burnt your man up the field. I don't see Charlie doing that as much, and it's not that he doesn't have the capacity to do it. Again, though, I just want to emphasize, this is not all Charlie's fault. Some of this is to do with the game style, and some of this is to do with execution. But I also think that he personally contributes. The next thing I wanted to look at is goals. The thing that people tend to care the most about when it comes to their key forwards. So this table shows a little bit more about how players get their goals, especially in terms of accuracy. One quirk is that Jeremy Cameron is actually the least accurate of the players listed. But this is a good way for me to introduce the last two columns. The second last column is expected score per shot, which is the average expected score per shot at goal given the difficulty of each shot taken. So what it does is it assesses the quality of the shot based on how everyone in the league would do. So from this, you can see that Jesse takes the easiest shots at goal, while Jeremy actually takes the hardest shots at goal. The last column is expected score given the shot rating. So it's how much above or below the expected result of that shot they do. So the second last column is how hard the shot is, and the last column is, do you do better or worse than what is otherwise expected? So to be clear, on the last column, Charlie, Jeremy, and Jesse all do above the expected rate, given how hard the shots they take are, while Aaron Norton is slightly below the expected rate. So Charlie, Jeremy, and Jesse all have a positive result. So if for a given shot, the expected result is a 50% likelihood of kicking it, they would all do better than 50, while Aaron Norton does slightly less than 50. That is not the actual stats, but it's just a way to illustrate what the stats mean. So while Charlie takes the third easiest shots, or second hardest, if that's how you want to look at it, he converts at the second best rate compared to expectation. Only Jeremy Cameron does better, which is even more impressive given he takes the hardest shots. So Jeremy and Charlie take harder shots than the other two key forwards, and they convert at a better rate compared to expectation than the other forwards as well. Jesse Hogan takes the easiest shots on average, but still performs better than expected. The point of this is to show you that you can be successful in different ways. If you want to take hard shots like Jeremy or Charlie, you better be able to convert them like Jeremy and Charlie do. They do better than what is expected. Even though Jeremy's accuracy is last, he's still doing miles better than expected given the degree of difficulty. Additionally, Charlie and Jeremy take by far the most shots at goal. Again, you can only see the rankings. In terms of the raw numbers, they take by far the most shots at goal. This is in part because Aaron has the highest assist rate, which you can see there. So he passes off a lot of shots. I personally think that's a wonderful trait to have as a modern key forward. Not just taking all of the shots, but giving them off where you think it's appropriate. Jesse takes the deepest shots. In other words, the closest shots to goal. So he doesn't get as many opportunities because of this. All of this is to show that you can do it in different ways. But I am going somewhere with this. I completed an analysis on their accuracy based on shot distance and also how regularly they take shots from different positions. Like I said before, Jeremy and Charlie take the hardest shots, which you can see reflected here. Part of difficulty is the distance from where you've taken the shot. The row highlighted in that sort of greeny blue, I'd call that a green, I'm sure someone will suggest that it's not, but whatever, is that Charlie has taken more shots outside 50 than the other two players. He's taken more shots from outside 50 than Jeremy has, even though Jeremy has had over 130 more shots at goal in total. Now, to Charlie's credit, he also has the best accuracy from that distance. But from that distance, he's 10% worse than if he was at the 50-metre arc to, within 40 metres. And he's much less accurate than he is from anywhere within 40 metres. This is a criticism that is, again, levelled at Carlton. We bomb away, we take shots from very far out, and we rush. Charlie, unfortunately, is a key culprit for this. While he does convert better than expected from these sorts of positions, 35% from outside 50 is pretty good, it's still much less likely to be a goal than if you can hit up to anywhere within 40 metres. Obviously, he can't kick to himself, so he wouldn't kick to someone with exactly his percentages from within 40 metres, but everyone is statistically better from within 40 metres, from within 30 metres, than they are 50 metres out. So, even though he might do better than what is expected, I think this is, again, a symptom of something that has gone wrong for Carlton. That is taking an excessively large number of shots that are far away from goal and rushing opportunities that could otherwise be a little bit more clinical. This is what I've been talking about. Everyone criticises Carlton as a dump-kicking, bombs-away team. I'm saying Charlie is a big contributor to this issue. Because in terms of the number of shots that he has, it is significantly more than anyone else on the team, including Harry, that we will now get to. I don't think Charlie is bad for this, but I think if he adjusted this element of his game, he would be a substantially better player, which is remarkable given, again, for the last 4 years, he's been the second best key forward in the league, in my view. So, with all of this said, Charlie has an enormous number of positives, but a couple of negatives that are consistent with the negatives of the team. So I wanted to look at Charlie versus Harry to see how we may potentially fare if the forward line was to be rearranged around Harry. So, frankly, they're awfully similar through their peak years. As I mentioned before, these numbers for Charlie are for 2022 through 2025, while for Harry it's 2021 through 2024. So 4 years each. But again, Harry missed a lot of this season, so I didn't think it was really an instructive comparison to use this year for him. Charlie is slightly better for disposals, but Harry is slightly better in all marking categories. One thing I wanted to note is the marks on the lead. This is part of the comment I made before about Charlie asking for the ball over the back. I feel Harry is a player who asks for it over the back less than Charlie and is more likely to hit up at the lead. This can be seen because he averages an extra half mark per game on the lead. So what that would suggest to me is, in the odd instance here or there across the game, he would be more likely to say, if in doubt, I'll lead up, as opposed to if in doubt, I'll ask for it over the back, which I think is more conducive to a well-structured forward line. One thing that I think is important for the team going forward is playing as a whole team, and where this is relevant is the tackles per game. I know there are a lot of people that don't expect their key forwards to tackle. I think in the modern game, it's pretty much an expectation that you do. Keep in mind, Charlie was last out of the 4 key forwards that I showed in the previous graphics. With their averages, as you can see there, so about 1.2 a game for Charlie and 1.7 for Harry, over the course of a season, this means Charlie would get about 25 tackles while Harry would get about 40. So a difference of about 15 across a season, assuming they both played every game. If included in the previous graphic, Harry actually would have been second behind Aaron Norton. Aaron Norton averages like 1.9 tackles a game. I'm not the biggest Aaron Norton fan of all time, but his work rate is incredibly good. So big marks for that. Where Charlie is better is at scoring. He takes more shots than Harry, but in fairness, he's also more accurate. If you take out Harry's 2023 season, where he definitely had the yips. Look, I shouldn't say that. It's probably too harsh, and I like Harry, so I want to be fair on him. He seemed to have the yips. They're actually very similar for accuracy. As you can see there, Charlie goes at about 55%, Harry goes at 51%. In that season, Harry went at 37%, so it's dragged the average down quite a bit. Charlie, as a big tick to him though, is better in terms of assists. So this is another big point in favour of playing a team-centric game. While I keep pointing out the negatives of Charlie, I just want to reiterate again. I think he's the second best key forward in the league, at least through this period of time. And one element of that is the fact that he does give off goals. One thing where Charlie can be really good is when he's very engaged, when the ball hits the ground, he's quite dangerous and he does draw a crowd. So his ability to, give the hands or something like that, pretty good. So look, a big tick in favour of Charlie in that one regard. Harry's best year was also 2021, which was a year that, for those who don't remember, Charlie didn't play until like the second last game of the year. So his numbers in that year were slightly elevated when compared to his averages. This, plus his end of season this year, make me think that Harry does have the ability to get back to being a number 1 quality forward. I think he is definitely capable of recapturing his best form based on how he's played when Charlie's not around, both at the end of this year and previously, in 2021 being the biggest sample size of that. So, to summarise all of the things that I've waffled on about today, Charlie is fucking awesome. He's clearly the second best key forward in the league for mine in the last 4 seasons since his body has been right, because he had a lot of issues prior to 2022. However, he has some issues in his game that are consistent with Carlton's broader issues around play style. I don't think he always uses his footy IQ as much as he could, but I do think that he has it. A player that shows a good amount of assists, goal assists, is probably a pretty switched on player. So I think that he probably lets himself down a little bit in that regard, and he could definitely improve. I think he shows in his game that sometimes he makes things harder on himself than he otherwise could. Like I mentioned earlier, I think he wrestles a lot, asks for really long kicks, particularly over the back, that are just harder to mark than hitting up at a shorter ball. For anyone who's played footy, it's easier to mark a ball that's only been kicked 25 metres than that is 55, because it just hits your hand so much more softly. I don't think he uses his aerobic strength as much as he could, and he takes a lot of shots from outside 50 that are much lower likelihood for him and the team to score from. These are all criticisms of what have been levelled specifically at Carlton over time. This is why I think he might be emblematic of these issues. I don't think he's the whole problem, obviously, but I do think he is somewhat like an obvious person you could point to as, this is a symptom of the broader problems. I obviously think Charlie is a great player, and if he stays, I hope he adjusts his game to make it a bit easier on himself and the team. I want to be clear, I'm not blaming Charlie. Some of this is him, some of this is the team's play style, and some of this, especially this year, is frankly just bad execution from his teammates. It's never just one person's fault. However, if we lose Charlie, I think it gives us a great opportunity to change how we play with less reliance on the pitfalls that I've outlined above. Additionally, we are one of the only teams in the league that can afford to lose a player like Charlie because we have Harry. I also think, given Harry is more liable to hit up at the ball, consistently halve contests, and generally be a better outlet kick and tackler, him as the number one forward may be a better tone setter for a more team-first approach to our forward line. I hope it's clear from this how highly I rate Charlie, but I also think the pieces that we could get by trading him and reconfiguring the forward line around Harry may lead to better long-term results. If he goes, I wish him all the best. I'm probably going to make another video on Charlie, but more as a celebration of his time at the club, because I don't want it to be lost on anyone. I can equally think it might be beneficial for us for him to move, but also really appreciate and be grateful for what he's done at Carlton. This is something where I think Carlton fans ultimately need to be better. I don't want to appear too much on my high horse, but just because someone's leave doesn't mean you need to boo them or give them the double bird. We've had a lot of wonderful memories created by Charlie. That's the romance of football. But at the end of the day, the romance that I'm really after is Carlton being successful. And if the powers that be, such as Graham Wright, Michael Voss, Nick Austin, anyone else who gets a say on the matter, think we could become better by moving Charlie, and the statistics indicate we could at least reconfigure to something that might be better, then I hope we do what is in the best interests of Carlton. If Charlie decides to stay, I hope that he can make some relatively small tweaks in his game that will allow him to maximize his potential, but also allow the team to maximize their potential. With all of that said, if you like what I'm doing, please give me a like or a subscribe. If you want to engage, push back, agree, or give me some ideas, please leave a comment. But as always, go Blues!